I have this 2009 GMC Canyon. Today we're going to be doing upper and lower ball joints. We're also going to do tie rod ends and a Swaybar linkage. This is a 4x4 model, and so that's going to be a little bit different than other ones. So you have to remove the whole axle. So let's get started. The first thing I'm going to do here is just jack it up so I can get this wheel up. Now we're going to let it down on a jack stand so we can use the jack later to manipulate the control arm. Next, we're going to pop off the wheel. Using a 13mm socket. I'm just going to take off both of these screws. Now we can just kind of pop this off of here. I've just got this rubber bungee here. I'm just going to go through here. I'll go around this whole thing here. And just kind of attach it onto itself here. So this way we're not putting any pressure on that brake line. Next, I'm going to use this 36mm socket. If you don't have sockets this big, a lot of big parts stores will sell rental kits. So essentially you buy this axle socket set and then you can return it used, and everybody does that, and it's just a rental for free. So let's just pop off this axle. Next, I'm going to remove, this is a little ABS sensor here. I'm just going to remove these rubber tabs here so I can get this out of the way. And there's an 8mm socket holding in that ABS sensor. Let's get it right out of the way. This ABS sensor is coming out a little bit difficult, so I'm just going to get some thrust in here just to try to lubricate it to help it come out a little easier. Get this right out of the way. Next, we can use a 15mm deep socket. I'm just going to remove this upper ball joint. And again, a little bit of oil on the threads is always helpful. I'm going to remove this nut off the upper ball joint. I've got a 13/16 wrench. I just want to break this free and I want to get it loose. I don't want to take it all the way off. So you can see I've got the upper ball joint nut mostly loose, but it's not off. Now what we're going to do is we're going to try to break this free. The best technique I've found to do this is just use a big sledgehammer and just beat on it until it comes off. You want to make sure you have safety glasses on for this because you don't know what's going to fly off of here. Next thing I'm going to do is try to loosen this nut on this tie rod end. Again, I'm just going to get a little bit of oil in here. And I'm just going to try to beat on this. I think this one's not original, so it should come off pretty easy. Next, I'm going to take off this cotter pin so I can take the castle nut off of this tie rod end. Next, I have a 21mm socket. I'm just going to see if I can take off this castle nut. The breaker bar. Holy cow. I'm just going to try the impact here, I think. The tie rod free, we can just do this trick to tap on that, and the tie rod is just dropping right out. We're at a point now where we can lift up this control arm, but you want it to be back far enough that you're not going to be covering up the holes that are available to access the bolts that hold on that lower ball joint. So now I'm going to add some oil to this lower ball joint. Get some oil on that nut. I'm going to do this linkage too. Let that start soaking in because we're going to take that off shortly. I'm going to get these upper ones too. Oil everywhere. And now I've got a 27mm socket on a breaker bar. I'm going to see if I can get this lower one broken. Oh, that's coming right off. All right, now we don't want it all the way off. We still need to break this free. So I'm going to leave it on until the threads start to catch. And now I'm going to do the old hammer trick again. there we go. Next, I'm going to take an 18mm socket, and I'm just going to try to break free all 4 of these nuts. I'm going to get them all free, and I'm going to use the impact to finish them off. This last one, I'm going to tighten this ball joint nut back up just a little bit because this whole knuckle is kind of in the way. Next, I'm going to raise it up just a little bit more. Now I'm going to remove this top nut here. Alright, so that top ball joint is now completely free. Alright, I'm going to take off this bottom nut now, and this whole thing should just drop out. Taking the last of these bolts off of the upper ball joint. So this is now free. This can pop out, and this whole thing should be able to slide out. I've jacked up this now just a little bit to take the tension off of the torsion bar, and I'm just going to go ahead and loosen both of these up. Now, if these start to spin on the back here, you're going to need to get some vice grips. The OEM ones do not have any kind of flat spot or anything to get a wrench, which kind of sucks. So just get a vice grip in here. I have this new one from Moog. As far as I can tell, they're identical. It doesn't really matter which way you go. Either way, it'll fit just fine. Now, this aftermarket linkage does have the little square end here, so you can just use an 18mm socket to hold it while you tighten it on. Next, I can just unscrew my tie rod end since I've already loosened it up. And I can thread on my new one. So instead of taking this all out as one piece, I'm going to try to install this into this control arm first, and then see if we can bring the entire hub over here and attach that to this. I'm going to slide this in here and get it started. Next, I'm going to try to put this hub right back on. Alright, so I have that on. Take my washer and my axle nut. I'm going to put that back on. I'm going to take my castle nut. I'm going to put that on the bottom here. I'm going to take my impact and try to seat this little ball joint. I'm going to lower this down just a little bit. Next, I'm going to do this upper ball joint. You may need to lower the jack to get this to slide in just nice. I'm just going to get it started here, something like that, and then we'll get the nuts in. Now we're going to take the castle nut and get that started. This thing's a pain in the butt to get in. I don't know why they made this so stupid. If you have trouble getting these little grease fittings started in the top of this thing, you take a little hammer, try to get as square as you can, and just give it a little tap. That'll help kind of seat it into those. I don't even know if there are threads there, but if it's self-tapping or what the deal is. But to get it started, do what you have to get it in there. Next, I'm going to torque everything down, and I'll put in the description all of the torque values that you need to set to. You have to put these little cotter pins in the castle nuts to keep them from spinning out. This axle nut, the torque reading on this is higher than my torque wrench will go. And so what you can do is just take a breaker bar and put it on there. And this is just going to spin freely. So you can just take a screwdriver and stick it here right in the end of your rotor so that it can't spin. And then you can twist against that. The next thing I'm going to do is clean up these brake pads. There's a little bit of rust and grease and stuff on the ends of these things. So I'm just going to get these cleaned up on the wire wheel, and then I'm going to put some lube on them, and we'll put them back on. If your pads are properly lubricated, then they should spring away from the rotor. That'll help extend a little bit of mileage and keep them from dragging, help them last a little longer. I am going to get a little bit of brake clean on these rotors though before we get too much further. I don't want any kind of grease from me. I've been handling it. I don't want to get grease on the rotor. It'll help. It'll prevent it from stopping. Next, I've got a grease gun. I'm just going to go through. I'm just going to make sure all of these are nice and full of grease. Next, I'm going to put the caliper back on. I'm just going to check make sure these pins aren't seized up before I do that. Make sure they don't need to be cleaned up or lubed. They feel pretty good. So, now finally we can put our ABS sensor back in. And it just slides back in that hole. And now that we've got everything in place, we don't need to move this anymore. Now we can finally get our tie rod end in place. One more thing I wanted to share that you might not know about these trucks is that there is no stock cabin air filter. So if you get a whole bunch of noise in your fan when you turn it on, you hear a tick, 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 with just stuff that just keeps getting stuck in there. It's because you don't have a cabin air filter. But I made one, and I'll put a link in the description to a video where you can see how I install it. So that's it. We're going to put the wheel back on, and we are just about done. I will put a link to all of the parts that I used in this video. If you use my links, then that lets Amazon know that I sent them your way, and they'll give me a small part of the sale at no cost to you. Helps me out, helps keeps this channel going. If you have any questions, as always, feel free to let me know in the comments. And even more so, if you've seen something that I did wrong or that I could have done better, then please let me know. I'm always learning. I'm always happy to hear new tips and tricks, and that'll help the guy that's watching this video behind you as well. So be sure to check the comments and see if anybody's left any comments about a step that I should have done different and maybe save you some headaches. So I hope you found this helpful.